I'm a 25-year-old woman, and I grew up in what most people would consider a perfect family. My dad, let's call him Richard, is a wealthy businessman. He's the kind of guy who wears tailored suits, drives luxury cars, and has a Rolodex full of powerful connections. My mom, Emily, is the quintessential socialite, always impeccably dressed, hosting charity galas, and making sure our family looked flawless to the outside world. Then there's my younger brother, Ethan. He's the golden child. Smart, athletic, and everything my dad ever wanted in a son. And then there's me. I've always felt like the odd one out in my family. Growing up, it was little things at first. My dad would praise Ethan for every little achievement: winning a soccer game, getting an A on a test, while I had to work twice as hard just to get a good job from him. My mom would brush it off, saying I was being too sensitive. But deep down, I knew something was off. As I got older, the divide became more obvious. Ethan was groomed to take over the family business, while I was pushed towards softer pursuits: art, literature, things my dad deemed unimportant. When I graduated college and started working as a graphic designer, my dad barely acknowledged it. Meanwhile, Ethan's internship at Dad's company was treated like a national holiday. But the real turning point came last month. It was a typical family dinner. Ethan was talking about some big deal he'd closed at work, and my dad was beaming with pride. I tried to share something about a project I'd been working on, but my dad cut me off mid-sentence. "That's nice, sweetheart," he said, in that dismissive tone I'd come to know so well. Something inside me snapped. "Why do you always do that?" I blurted out. "Why do you act like nothing I do matters?" The table went silent. My mom looked uncomfortable. Ethan stared at his plate, and my dad just sighed like I was being dramatic. "You're overreacting," he said. "I'm proud of you, but let's be honest. Your brother's work is more substantial." That was the final straw. I stood up, threw my napkin on the table, and stormed out. Later that night, my mom came to my room. She tried to calm me down, but I wasn't having it. "Why does he hate me?" I asked. "He doesn't hate you," she said. He's hard on you because he wants you to be strong." "Bullshit," I said. "There's something else going on. I can feel it." My mom hesitated, and that's when I knew I was right. "Tell me the truth," I said. "What aren't you saying?" She looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "There's something you need to know," she said. "Richard, he might not be your biological father." I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. "What are you talking about?" I asked. My mom explained that before she married Richard, she'd had a brief relationship with someone else. She didn't think much of it at the time. She and Richard were already engaged, and she assumed I was his. But as I got older, she started to notice things. The way I didn't look like him, the way he treated me differently. She never said anything because she didn't want to disrupt our family. I was furious. "You've been lying to me my whole life?" "I didn't want to hurt you," she said. But the damage was done. The next day, I ordered a paternity test online. I didn't tell anyone. Not my mom, not Ethan, definitely not Richard. When the kid arrived, I swabbed my cheek, sent it off, and waited. The results came back 2 weeks later. I opened the email with trembling hands. The words on the screen confirmed what I'd already suspected. Richard wasn't my father. My biological dad was someone named James, a man my mom hadn't seen in over 25 years. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was relieved. Finally, I had an explanation for why I'd always felt like an outsider. But another part of me was angry. Angry at my mom for keeping this secret. Angry at Richard for treating me the way he did. And angry at myself for not figuring it out sooner. I confronted Richard the next day. "I know the truth," I said. "I'm not your daughter." He looked stunned for a moment, then his expression hardened. "Your mother told you," he said. "Yes," I said. "And I took a test. It's true." He didn't say anything at first. Then he sighed and said, "I always suspected." But your mother, she swore you were mine. And that's why you treated me like that? I asked. Because you thought I wasn't yours? It's not that simple, he said. But to me it was. Ethan was shocked when I told him. He didn't know what to say, but he promised to support me no matter what. My mom, on the other hand, was a mess. She kept apologizing, saying she never meant to hurt me, but the truth was out now, and there was no going back. As for me, I knew what I had to do next. I needed to find James, my real father. After my mom dropped that bombshell, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was like a puzzle piece I didn't even know was missing had suddenly clicked into place. All those years of feeling like an outsider, of being treated differently by Richard. It all made sense now. But I needed proof. I couldn't just take my mom's word for it. So I did what any rational person would do. I ordered a paternity test online. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop screen, my hands shaking as I entered my credit card information. The test wasn't cheap, but I didn't care. I needed answers. When the kit arrived a few days later, I swabbed my cheek, sealed the sample, and sent it off. Then came the waiting. Those 2 weeks felt like an eternity. I couldn't focus on work. I barely slept, and every time my phone buzzed with an email notification, my heart would skip a beat. Finally, the results came in. I opened the email with trembling hands. The words on the screen hit me like a ton of bricks. Probability of paternity, 0%. Richard is excluded as the biological father. I don't know how long I sat there staring at those words. Part of me had expected it, but seeing it in black and white was still a shock. Richard wasn't my father. My biological dad was someone named James, a man my mom hadn't seen in over 25 years. I felt a weird mix of emotions. Relief, because I finally had an explanation for why I'd always felt like an outsider. Anger, because my mom had kept this secret from me for my entire life. And sadness, because the man I'd called Dad for 25 years wasn't actually my dad. I knew I had to confront Richard. I waited until the next day, when I knew he'd be home alone. I walked into his study, where he was sitting at his desk, typing away on his laptop. He looked up when I walked in, and I could tell by the look on his face that he knew something was up. "We need to talk," I said. He sighed and closed his laptop. "What is it now?" I took a deep breath. "I know the truth," I said. "I'm not your daughter." For a moment, he just stared at me. Then he leaned back in his chair and said, "Your mother told you." "Yes," I said, "and I took a test. It's true." He didn't say anything at first. He just sat there staring at me like he was trying to figure out what to say. Finally, he sighed and said, "I always suspected. But your mother, she swore you were mine." "And that's why you treated me like that?" I asked. "Because you thought I wasn't yours?" "It's not that simple," he said. But to me, it was. The fallout was brutal. Richard was furious at my mom for keeping the secret from him. They had a huge fight that night, and I could hear them yelling at each other from my room. My mom was crying, Richard was shouting, and I just sat there, feeling numb. Ethan was caught in the middle. I told him the truth the next day, and he didn't know how to react. He was shocked, of course, but he also didn't want to take sides. He kept saying things like, "This doesn't change anything," and "You're still my sister." But I could tell he was struggling to process it all. As for me, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief, because I finally had an explanation for why I'd always felt like an outsider. Anger, because my mom had kept this secret from me for my entire life. And sadness, because the man I'd called Dad for 25 years wasn't actually my dad. But more than anything, I needed answers. I started by asking my mom about James. At first, she was hesitant to talk about him, but I pushed her until she finally gave in. She told me that James was someone she'd met in college before she started dating Richard. They'd had a brief relationship, but it didn't last long. When she found out she was pregnant, she assumed I was Richard's, and she never told James about me. "Do you know where he is now?" I asked. She shook her head. I haven't seen or spoken to him in over 25 years, she said. That wasn't much to go on, but it was a start. I spent the next few weeks trying to track James down. I searched for him on social media, but his name was too common and I didn't have enough information to narrow it down. I even hired a private investigator, but they didn't have much luck either. Just when I was starting to lose hope, I got a break. I reached out to one of my mom's old friends from college, and she remembered James. She didn't know where he was now, but she gave me the name of the town he'd been living in back then. It wasn't much, but it was something. I decided to take a trip to that town. I didn't know what I'd find, but I had to try. The day before I left, I had one last conversation with Richard. He'd been distant since the truth came out, and I could tell he didn't know how to act around me. I'm leaving tomorrow, I told him. I'm going to try to find my real dad. He nodded, but he didn't say anything at first. Then he sighed and said, I hope you find what you're looking for. It wasn't much, but it was something. After weeks of searching, I finally found my biological father, James. It wasn't easy. I hit dead end after dead end, but I refused to give up. I reached out to old friends of my mom's, scoured social media, and even hired a private investigator. Finally, I got a lead. James was living a few states away, working as a carpenter. I was nervous about reaching out to him. What if he didn't want to meet me? What if he didn't even know I existed? But I knew I had to try. I sent him a message on Facebook, explaining who I was and why I was reaching out. I didn't expect a reply, but to my surprise, he responded the next day. I had no idea, he wrote, but I'd like to meet you. We agreed to meet at a small cafe in his town. The days leading up to the meeting were a blur of nerves and anticipation. I didn't tell anyone in my family. Not my mom, not Richard, not even Ethan. This was something I needed to do on my own. The day of the meeting, my stomach was in knots. I drove to the cafe, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I walked in, I spotted him immediately. He was sitting at a table by the window, and the moment I saw him, I knew it was him. It was like looking into a mirror. He had the same eyes as me, the same smile, even the same way of tilting his head when he was thinking. When he saw me, he stood up, and for a moment we just stared at each other. You must be Alice, he said finally, his voice shaking a little. Yeah, I said. And you're James. He nodded, and then to my surprise, he pulled me into a hug. It was awkward at first. We were both nervous. But then it felt right. Like a piece of me I didn't even know was missing had finally clicked into place. We sat down and started talking. At first, it was small talk. How was the drive? What did I do for work? That kind of thing. But then we got into the heavier stuff. I had no idea about you, he said. Your mom never told me. I didn't know about you either, I said. Not until a few weeks ago. I told him everything. About growing up feeling like an outsider, about the paternity test, about the fallout with Richard. He listened quietly, his expression a mix of sadness and disbelief. I'm so sorry, he said when I finished. I wish I'd known. I would have been there for you. Hearing him say that meant more to me than I can put into words. We talked for hours. He told me about his life, how he'd moved around a lot, how he'd always wanted a family but never quite found the right person. He showed me pictures of his work as a carpenter, and I was amazed at how talented he was. But the most surprising thing? He wasn't angry at my mom. I get why she didn't tell me, he said. Back then we were young and it was complicated. I don't blame her. Hearing him say that made me see my mom in a new light. She'd made mistakes, sure, but she was just trying to do what she thought was best. By the time we left the cafe, I felt like I'd known him my whole life. We exchanged numbers and promised to stay in touch. The drive home was a blur. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, trying to process everything. When I got home, I called Ethan and told him everything. He was shocked but supportive, and he promised to keep it between us for now. The next day, I sat down with my mom and told her about the meeting. She was nervous at first, but when I told her how kind James had been, she broke down in tears. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I never meant to hurt you." "I know," I said, "and I forgive you." As for Richard, things are still complicated. We've talked a few times since the truth came out, but it's awkward. He's trying, though, and that means something. Have you ever experienced something similar? Share your thoughts.